Welcome to the Thunder. They call me Shooter.
Wow, that's a nice shooter. Let me have a look at it.
Take a look. And Thomas Schooley in the house.
Look at this guy. Classy. Classy fella.
Classy's what they call him. All right. We are here another Wednesday night. We've got some not so great hockey to talk about. And we've got Eric Erlinson jumping on the show a little bit later. So stay tuned for Eric if that's what you're here for. But we're going to try to figure out what's wrong with the Bolts tonight and talk about a couple pieces of news. And we got to start off with letting you know, big announcement. If you're on Facebook, you might have seen it. That's the only place it's been leaked. But next Thursday night, that is March 20th, the Dallas Stars are playing the Tampa Bay Lightning in Dallas, and we are going to host a official, well, I guess according to the team, an unofficial watch party at Tampa Joe's. So if you've never been in Tampa Joe's, it's right off the Veterans Expressway in the same parking lot as the big AMC theater over there. So a pretty convenient location. If you've never been to Tampa Joe's, I've been there a couple times. Great spot, great food, good location. And they want to have some more Bolts fans in there for games. They were open for us doing actually every game for the rest of the season. We're not going to do that. But if you guys want to come out, so far, here's what I can tell you. Stay tuned. We just kind of put this all together. But they're going to have a special on blue Jello shot. So, Thomas, I know you're a big Jello shot guy, right?
I am.
I hope it's blue. I hope you like the blue ones. So blue Jello shots. We're also going to have a swag giveaway at intermission, and we're also going to give a pair of tickets away. And that game is going to be for the Penguins game that's coming up. It'll be the following week once the team gets back from this road trip. So I'll put it in the chat once I let Thomas start to talk. But if you can let us know. We do want to try to get an idea of how many people are going to be there, but we have the whole run of the place. They said we can fill up the whole dang place, and you can fit a lot of people just in that bar area. Have you been to Tampa Joe's, Mr. Schooley?
No. I've driven by it. I've never been inside, so
yeah,
this is gonna be
good, really good food. I've never had anything bad there, so hopefully you guys can join us. That game does start at 8. I was a little bit worried about that. It's a little bit later game because it's in Dallas. But we are going to be ready and set up at 7. If you are out of town, I'm bringing the camera. I'm going to set up everything just like we did at Dignitary. So if you want to watch along with us while you're at home or you're out of town or whatever it is, we will have the camera up, but we want you to come watch the game with us. You can come win some cool stuff and some swag and stuff like that. So make sure you do that. And look, Stephanie's ready for some Jello shots. Thomas is a Jello shot professional. I thought he was more of a pudding pop guy, but
not on Gasparilla. Gasparilla morning. I am a Jello shot professional.
There you go. Well, you will be on March 20th as well. So hopefully you guys can come join us. And then don't forget, next week we have the Hockey Collective joining us. So we'll learn all about that. That show is also going to be a late one. We got to start that one at 9 o'clock next week. And then hopefully we'll get back to doing the show at an earlier hour. But 9 o'clock this week, 9 o'clock next week. And again, hold on. Eric Erlinson, as soon as he gets home, he's going to jump on the call with us. And we're going to ask, what is wrong with the Lightning? What's going on with these last couple games? They haven't looked so good. Thomas, I've seen a lot of panic even in the Thunderbolts group. Are you ready to jump off the ledge yet after these last 2 games? Even, you got the Buffalo game too.
No, the reason why we haven't won, she just said hello in the chat. We haven't had the great voice of Sonia singing these last couple games. So that's the issue. No, in all seriousness, hi Sonia, miss your face. But one of the things that has stood out is since the Four Nations break, Cirelli hasn't scored 1 goal at all. Plenty of posts,
pretty close,
but but he has not scored. We haven't seen Hagel, the pre-Four Nations goal streak that he was on. You see Getzel is doing a lot of the work lately. Cooch seems a little off. Vassie's been giving up horrible goals. Um, and yeah, I saw you tweeting live during the other night, and you're like, that one Vassie would like back. And then the second one, you're like, that's two now Vassie would like to have back. You know, you score one goal in 2 games, give up 8 goals total. You got to get that defense back. There's definitely some issues going on there. Of course, Hedman came back last night, but it didn't help.
To not help, not one bit. No, it was a tough start to last night's game because I thought right off the bat they looked pretty decent, right? Had the power play chance. Don't know how they didn't score there. They had some chances to score early, and then you saw Carolina score that shorthanded goal when we couldn't get it done in the power play. By the way, the ninth shorthanded goal we've given up. Only one team has given up more goals, the Boston Bruins, shorthanded. So I know what everyone wants to say. Well, we score a lot of shorthanded goals too, but you can't let up that many shorthanded goals. And that one was really killer. It kind of changed the tide of that first period. That one was one of the goals that Vassie would want back, and he had one later in the game that definitely he wanted back too. I thought too, you can't really blame on Vassie, and the only reason why I'm really bringing that up because people have been harsh on Vasilevsky, especially after last night's game. I didn't see Buffalo's game because I was out of town, but from what I understand, there were some weak ones in that, but Vassie's still at the top of the league in
Yeah,
all
that's
the
that's
important stats.
13 goals in 3 games. I mean, you've got. We just came from Vassie was the NHL Player of the Month for giving up barely any goals, and then 13 goals in 3 games. That's definitely uncharacteristic with him. You see, Stephanie says Chief said that Vassie is playing too deep in his net. I don't know if it's just that, but it also when we were having those short games, they talked about how the defense was tightening up. The defense is not tightening up. They have looked like they are just standing there and just going around. And I see what's the deal with the defense. And we don't know. I mean, these guys now, there should not be any kind of chemistry issues. They have played together all season, except for we just got Moser back, but he started the season that way. So there shouldn't be this many lapses in the defense.
Yeah,
And
not
I
on
saw it.
defense.
No, when I saw it down in Fort Lauderdale, there was a couple things that you just saw Hedman just standing there and watching. The other night there was a Chernak one where they just skated around him, and we've had that issue with the Perbix, the Lillebergs. Do we call up Crozier? Do we get something there? Something has to be with this defense to tighten it back up. I think we haven't had a show since we got Yanni back, did we?
The last show was the day of the trade, so no, we have
Okay.
not seen him play yet.
Yanni and Borkstrom, they got a goal and an assist their first game. So it doesn't look like that's too much of a disruption because they're on that line together. So I don't know. Hopefully they figure that out. We have Philly tomorrow. That should be a winnable game. But you also look at the teams that we played. These are teams that had big trades at the trade deadline and that people thought they were given in the towel. Carolina lost Mika Rantanen, who we talked about that on our show. I said possibly traded again. And what happens? He gets traded again because he doesn't want to resign. And then you saw who was the other one? Who else did we lose to?
We lost to Boston at
Boston.
home.
Boston. After losing Marchand, Coyle, 3 big players, they were expected to just fold too. It's like these teams that lost these players are in like a desperation mode, and we're getting them right after this trade deadline where everybody says, okay, they're done with now that they traded off all these guys, and these teams are now winning and being like, nope, look, we still got a team here.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that kind of motivates these teams to, like, you're on Boston, you're going to get a couple fresh faces. I mean, more than a couple in Boston because they traded away a lot of guys. So you got to think about, like, we're bringing up these guys that this is their chance to make an impression. And then the guys there are figuring, hey, this might be it for me here. I better play really well so I get picked up next year. Or, even if they're under contract, they want to try to impress the current coach who might not even be the coach next year. So you saw Boston thankfully beat Florida last night in the last minute of the game, which is the only saving grace from our ugly loss last night is we didn't lose any ground on them. But yeah, you're right. They got to start to turn things around here because these last 3 games since the trade deadline have not been pretty. The other thing is, what was I going to talk about? I don't know. Kucherov, and we got the Lightning Insider coming on. So we'll ask him if he got any update with his insider powers on what's going on with Cooch. So, I mean, a lot of people have speculated over the last several days, maybe even the last week, that Kucherov is hurt. And then you saw him leave in the third period or not play in the third period yesterday. Cam Atkinson comes up today. Maybe that's to fill in for Cooch tomorrow. A lot of people think that's the case, and maybe Eric can kind of confirm that. But the other side of the bad defense lately is there hasn't been much offense the last 2 games. We got shut out at home, which never happens. And then, we only scored the 1 goal last night. This offense still runs around Nikita Kucherov. And if he's going to be out for an extended period of time, that's not a good sign going down this stretch because we are in no means in the playoffs yet. If only we had a magic number to look at.
Oh, and I just happen to have that. The magic number, and just figured it out today, is 26.
Say again?
26.
26. Okay.
26 is the Bolts' magic number. Montreal does play tonight, so that will, if Montreal loses, that will actually change the Lightnings, because right now Montreal would be the 8th place team that they would have to be ahead of. So it would go to 24 if Montreal loses tonight, but 26 as of right now.
So there you go. The countdown is on. Esteban, welcome to the show. Hometown, Baltimore, Maryland. Hey, I used to live there. Proud to be part of the Distant Thunder. I don't know if you heard right at the beginning of the show.
Esteban, are you related to Ed Encina, the great Tampa Bay Times reporter?
We just assume all Encinas are related. But if you didn't hear us at the beginning of the show, Esteban, we're going to have a watch party here in Tampa. You probably can't make it next week, but we are going to broadcast that. So you can kind of feel like you're at the party. And actually how we're going to have it, the camera set up, is you're going to see everyone behind us. So make sure you follow us on YouTube if you don't already. But yeah, welcome. Go Distance Thunder.
Esteban is related to Ed. Ed's a great reporter for Tampa Bay Times. His daughter is actually in Thunderbolts. She shares his stories a lot in the page. So it's another great, if you have Twitter, go online, follow Ed Encina. You see Stephanie here. Yeah, Eddie in the Yard is his ex name. Stephanie here said that Kucherov, from Ed Encina, Kucherov left practice on Monday holding his arm.
Yeah, so no bueno. Hopefully nothing serious is going on with that arm that can take him out extended time. So yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on, and that's not going to help our offense. We're going to need Point, we're going to need Hagel, we're going to need some of these other offensive players to step it up, especially going into a 2-game losing streak on the road over to Philadelphia. So there you go. Confirmed. The Encinas. The thunder runs deep in them. Always need an excuse to hit the Thunderbolt. All right, before Eric gets here, let's talk shit about the Panthers a little bit. We did not get to talk about because we were it went down Friday, trade deadline day. Our favorite rat is now king of the rats, Brad Marchand. Which, by the way, what is Boston doing? Trading their own captain within division. I mean, do you think they're going to try to get him back? Because he becomes a free agent.
No. He wouldn't. There's a huge story written about him. And real quick, Esteban is his brother. But there was a big story where they were not close. This was a very Stamkos-like discussion with them too. They were so far apart in numbers that Boston started taking offers a while beforehand.
Yeah, that was the rumor.
From what I'd seen, he would not sign off on anybody except for someone in the division. And they wanted to get something for him rather than let him go in the offseason. So
what a rat move,
but
too.
Let's talk about the Panthers, how Kachuk is on LTIR. You have Marchand, who's out week to week. And then miraculously, they make a trade for a defenseman. And then the next day it comes out that Barkov is suspended for 20 games.
Oh, Ekblad.
I mean,
the other
for performance enhancing drugs.
PEDs.
So,
PEDs.
Yeah. So
only 20 games though? Is that the NHL standard? If you get busted with PEDs,
I think in the player agreement that is the first time as a 20 game ban. But it just so happens his statement also came out 2 minutes after the NHL announced it. So obviously the Panthers knew in advance. He knew in advance and had his camp already make a statement for him once they announced it.
Which was basically like when he was recovering from his last injury, he took something that I guess was a violation. I call bullshit. The dude's on steroids, clearly.
Oh yeah.
By the way, I did just get a message here from the Lightning Insider, so he will be here in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Don't you worry. I know a lot of people probably are just tuning in for him. And if you do have questions for him, save them, and you can actually start putting them in the chat if you want to ask Eric any questions, but he'll be on shortly. Just send me that message. Yeah, those dirty rats down south, manipulating the cap, doing PEDs, getting the Rat King. We just got to take them out in the playoffs this year. We have to.
It starts to get that you think that team's going to have too much egos. Bennett, Marchand, Ekblad, Barkov, Tkachuk. It's too much egos in one place. And it would be funny to just watch them implode from inside. And Marchand did his first press conference the other day and said something like, we, meaning the Boston, had been beat by the Panthers. And he goes, the Bruins had been beat. And he recorrected himself so that he didn't say we anymore. So it was weird seeing that press conference and seeing him in the red Florida Panthers stuff. But, there was tons of surprise trades. Was that the biggest one for you on the trade deadline?
I thought so. Did you think anything was much bigger?
Mika Rantanen to Dallas was kind of big.
We were kind of expecting that once they weren't going to pull another Jake Gensel and just rent the guy. You usually want to, if you're spending draft picks and players and stuff, you want to sign that guy. And Ratnan went in there apparently and said, "No,
Well, and
you're an."
it was a big slap in the face, I thought, to Carolina when he came out with his statement saying he was willing to sign an extension with the right team. And but obviously Carolina was not the right team, and you wonder what's going on over there. I we saw that list of coaches that coaches would want to team players would want to play for, and Coop was at the top of that list, and Brindamore was like second or third in there. And me and April were just talking about this. We went to the Strawberry Festival this last Sunday, which we saw Dave Michigan there with his wife and kids. Um, but is there something going on in Carolina that these players are not wanting to stay in Carolina and sign longer contracts? You had Jake last year, and now Miko this year.
I don't know. That's a good question because I've been to a game there. I mean, the only thing I can really think of is I don't know what their facilities look like, but maybe their facilities suck. They play. I don't know if people know this. They play at a college basketball arena.
Yeah, we did a group trip of 45 people of us, 45 of us Thunderbolts went to Carolina. We did the Checker Syracuse game the first night, and then we did the Lightning Hurricanes game the second night. And yeah, that's a basketball stadium.
It's NC State's basketball stadium.
Yeah.
That's where they
Yeah.
play. But I think Raleigh's a cool town. Like that is one place I would actually live. I think North Carolina is a cool place because you got, beaches, you got mountains. Raleigh's actually right in the middle of all of it. You got ice hockey, so that checks that box for me. But it doesn't seem like these players really want to stay there unless they were homegrown and drafted there, and that's all they kind of know.
But I mean, I saw a thing that said the person who won this trade was the one for Carolina that gave Mika Rantanen his number. Miko gave him a Rolex watch, a very expensive Rolex watch, to only lose his number for, what was it, 17 games, I think. Now the guy got his number back, 12 games. He got his number back plus a Rolex.
Yeah, you're right. He made out like a bandit.
And then they gave up Natchez for nothing, which was good because Natchez, he was a lightning killer.
He was one of those guys that just crushed us. Every game seemed like he'd score a goal against us. And now he's off in Colorado. Colorado made quite the roster turnover so far this year too. They made a couple more trades. I do want to bring this up. We got the insider, but I want to bring
see the spoons in the background. That can only mean one thing.
Hold on. I always have to one up our guy with my one big spoon does the same job as a bunch of little scoop spoons. But let's bring him on here. We've got the insider, Eric Erlandson. Eric, what would it be a scene if I showed up with this and gave it to you as an award in the press box?
Good luck getting that through security.
It is metal.
What's up,
Eric,
boys?
how have you been?
I've been good. I've been busy. As you know, I got my hands in a lot of cookie jars these days. But I've been good.
Good. Well, hopefully those cookies are good.
I was going to say, me too, the Girl Scouts, though.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got some tag-alongs hanging around here somewhere.
Hopefully the cookies are better than the last two games for the Bolts. Was what we've been talking about. We're trying to figure out what is wrong with this team really since the trade deadline, giving up a lot of goals, not scoring a lot of goals. The exception is really that Buffalo game. Everyone is scoring a lot of goals that game. First off, was there any news from the team on Nikita Kucherov? I doubt it, right?
I didn't see any. They were scheduled to practice in Philadelphia, but I didn't see anything about whether or not that practice was actually held today. So if they didn't practice today, there's no news. It would make sense that they didn't practice today. Um, with the schedule that they were on, it's going to kind of thin out here a little bit down the final 6 weeks of the season. But they were, they're in another busy month here, so it wouldn't surprise me if they just had an off day. So to make a long answer short, no, there's no update on Nikita Kucherov.
Yeah, I figured they usually don't love to talk too much in depth about player injuries. But something to keep an eye on. They did bring Cam Atkinson up, so we'll see what
Yeah,
that means.
I don't know if that's related, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It could be, but the plan, when Julian held his press conference and I asked him what the plan was for Cam, he said the plan was to bring him back at some point. They weren't sure when, but they were going to bring him back, and they're in Philadelphia tomorrow, right? Like that's where he played the last couple of years, so there might be something to that too. That's just me speculating out loud a little bit. And hoping that it's not injury related. But it could very well be. I mean, they do like to do these things. I mean, who knows what the season's going to bring for Cam Atkinson after this year. So it very well could be related to that.
Gotcha. And, what do you think's happened these last couple of games? A lot of people are piling on Vasi. And, even I had tweeted out last night, a couple soft goals he probably wants back. But the other side of that is the offense hasn't really done much the last 2 games either. Do you have any theory on, I kind of said to Thomas earlier, maybe it's because this is a Cooch lingering injury on the offensive side. We know he kind of ignites the offense. But, why do you think the defense has played so bad? It's not like I guess they have switched up those lines a little bit. But, the new guys are all on offense. So I wouldn't know if it's a chemistry issue on the defense kind of taking a step back since, the streak where they were playing so well.
So I have 2 theories. One of them does sort of lay into what you just said there about integrating new players. And yes, both Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gorder, obviously forwards. And I know Yanni Gorder's returning, but there's a lot of different players in that locker room from when he was here before. And the systems are a little bit different. Obviously, Jeff Blashill's in charge of everything with the structure now, and Jeff wasn't here when Yanni was here the last time. So it's kind of new for Yanni as well. And you see this sometimes. Some guys figure it out right away. Some guys need a little bit to kind of find their role. I mean, the best example is in 2022 when the Lightning acquired Nick Paul and Brandon Hagel. Nick Paul looked like he'd been here for 5 years. He's doing between the legs, shorthanded goals down in Sunrise and, doing spinorama passes to Ross Colton. I mean, he felt comfortable right away. It took Hagel longer. Like Hagel never really felt comfortable until the team came back the next season for training camp. And, he went on to have a 30-goal season. So I think that's part of it. And that's not a knock on players who take a little bit longer. It's just everybody's different in how they adjust to new surroundings, new systems, everything like that. And I think there's a little bit of that going on. I think that's why, because we saw at practice on Monday, Bjorkstrand was with Cirelli and Hagel, where I expect, and I'm sure other people expect, he's eventually going to wind up, because that was the one thing we knew they needed heading into the trade deadline, was somebody to play the right side with those 2 guys. Didn't turn out that way last night. He kept Gord and Bjorkstrand together because obviously they played together the last few years in Seattle. So I think maybe there's still some of that figuring out kind of going on, which you see sometimes. So that's, I don't know if it's disrupted chemistry, but you're bringing in 2 different players and trying to integrate them and bring them in. And it takes a little bit to sometimes to get everybody on the same page. And that can attest to some of the defensive breakdowns. The other theory I have is you see this all the time in the NHL. When teams have extended winning streaks, like you feel like you're never going to lose again. And then you lose a game, even though that was a close game they lost to the Panthers, and it easily could have won it. Cirelli hits the crossbar. Ryan McDonough has a shorthanded breakaway with 2 minutes to go. I mean, things could have went differently in that game. But when you get that first loss, there tends to be a dip. And we saw it a little bit in the Columbus game, even though they won that 1-5-2. Saw it a little bit more in the Buffalo game. They outscored their problems because nobody on Buffalo has any clue what they want to do defensively. So you're able to come back and score 6 goals on the Sabres and rally from down 2 goals. And then you really saw it against Boston. It was just like the rock just fell out and everything just thudded to the ice. It's one of the worst efforts. I don't want to say effort, worst performances I've seen from the team in a long time. They were out hustled to every puck. They were beaten to every loose puck. Boston came in and just outworked them. And you saw, I think, a little bit last night, the trend now kind of went back up a little bit. And I know they lost the game. The first period, though, they could have been up 2-1, right? They could have had a couple of goals and they could have had a lead. If they score, who knows where it goes. And then you got to the halfway point of the game and then the bottom fell out again. So if you believe in the process of things, that when you lose after an extended winning streak, you're going to take a little bit of a dip and then you have to build it back up. Now we'll see what happens tomorrow night in Philadelphia if that upward trend continues. And I know Philly's had all kinds of problems scoring goals. They've lost 5 straight games all on home ice to start a 7-game homestand the Flyers have going on right now. So we'll see, if it continues and if they can get back on the winning side against a team in Philly that's kind of going downhill. But you have to continue to kind of see signs of them working their game back up because they can do it. We saw it for a month straight, even with a 2-week gap in between the defensive side of the game and the commitment that they have. It's there. You just got to get it back and get the habits back. That's the one thing that I kind of really see in these past few games is just some of the habits, right? Braden Point trying to stick handle through 3 guys. Well, he knows that's not the way to play. Too many 50-foot passes and not enough 10-foot passes or 5-foot passes to work your way up the zone. So a lot of the bad habits that they had maybe earlier in the season have kind of crept back in a little bit.
Yeah.
So
Many giveaways yesterday.
First of all, I pointed out to someone today, and I think some people forget when they see these losses. In the last 10, the Lightning are still 7-3. So no time to hit the panic. I figured it out today. Right now, our magic number is 26, depending on Montreal's game tonight. But then we also talked about before you joined us. Do you think also these teams that we lost to, Carolina, Florida, but Boston, these 2 teams since the trade deadline, do you think they also are playing a little bit more with a chip on their shoulder after losing the players that they lost in the trade? I mean, you thought the stories that were written out of Boston after they got rid of so many was that's it for them. They've given up the whole season. They're done for the year. Fire Sweeney, get rid of the whole team. And then Carolina, you were reading on pages the same thing about them getting rid of Natchez for basically nothing because now you have Rantanen who ends up in Dallas. So these were 2 teams that I think had to show that they still had a fight left in them after losing so many and after so many things were written about these trades, these big trades that happened. And those two trades were the 2 biggest trades that were out there, as in noise that was made. I mean, you can say Boquist from the Islanders was a big trade, someone who's played with their team since the beginning of his career and was really emotional when they brought it to him in the game before. But do you think maybe that also helped Carolina win their game? Boston, we saw Boston beat Florida.
Boston for sure. I mean, look, you don't take guys like Marchand, and I know Marchand wasn't going to play anyway, but you remove him from the locker room and, a trade that a lot of people didn't think was going to happen, even though it had been rumored and whispered about. You take Brandon Carlo out of that room, off the ice. You take Charlie Coyle off the roster as well, ship him out, and, you bring in a Casey Middlestat. And I mean, you look at that Bruins roster, you're like, who's that guy? Like, other than Pasternak, like, who are these guys? And they came out with it. They had a chip on their shoulder. They came out and outworked the Lightning because look, they still have a mathematical chance. They still have as good of a chance as a Montreal or anybody else to make the playoffs. And, that's almost throwing shade to the front office. Oh, you don't believe in us? Watch this, right? Like we see this all the time in sports. So there's no doubt. And then you watch the Bruins last night come back from down 2-0 in the third period against the Panthers, who hadn't been giving up goals at all. Like they were on a nice little run themselves, and they come back and they score 3 times and they beat Florida in regulation. So for sure, Boston's got a little chip on their shoulder, and they've played like it the last couple of games. We'll see how sustainable it is. Sometimes you can kind of get that little post-trade deadline bump. You can get a hangover like the Lightning had on Saturday, or you can have the other direction like Boston had, and that's come out. As far as Carolina, I mean, look, there was a lot of drama around the Rantanen situation for sure. But at the end of the day, if you remove Rantanen out of it, you look at what they got back for Marty Necas, a guy who asked out last year, right? He asked out of Carolina last year. So they got rid of a guy who didn't really want to be there and bring in a couple of draft picks, bring in a Logan Stankoven, who's going to be a pretty good player. He's definitely a top 6 kind of guy moving forward. That's still a good team. That is still a good team. The structure, I mean, they have basically 18 identical skaters on the ice every time somebody comes over the boards. And that's why they're so hard to play against, because they're so strong up and down the lineup. So I don't know if losing to Carolina was necessarily a bump from the Hurricanes post deadline, playing with a chip on the shoulder. They're just a good team.
Yeah.
Right? They're just a good team. And, the Lightning had a couple of chances. I think if they could find a way to score on that power play early, because they had a lot of pressure, they had the puck a lot. I think that's where I think Bjorkstrand's going to make a big difference. You put that righty shot over there on the left circle, opens things up for Kucherov. It kind of opens up options again for Kucherov. If he can be a threat over on that side, it's going to help Braden Point in the bumper. I mean, if he can be a threat to shoot over on that side, that's going to really help this top power play. So they score on some of the chances that they had. I know they only registered one official shot on goal, but they had some good looks and some good opportunities. If they score there, who knows? But at the end of the day, Carolina is still a very good team. I think they and New Jersey have kind of felt the heat from Columbus a little bit, pushing from behind. So they've kind of had to get their act together to make sure they don't drop down into a wild card spot and put their season, their postseason chances in jeopardy either. So,
yeah, and we were actually kind of talking about Carolina before you jumped on. With Ratinen kind of saying he's not going to sign long term there. We saw Jake Gensel in a very similar situation last season where he ended up not re-signing and coming here, which has been great. We can't wrap our head around it. Why do you think these guys don't want to play in Carolina? Or do you just think it's just like those two guys? Or I guess.
Well, no, because he just said Natchez wanted out too.
Yeah, he wasn't going to.
But yet the poll came out saying that Brindamore is one of the top coaches that people want to play for. So do you think it's front office? Do you think it's the whole shebang? Or
I think if you had a poll of owners, I think Tom Dundon would be near the bottom. He's a very hands-on kind of guy, and we're not used to knowing. Other than obviously we know Jeff Vinnick and the group that bought, we know the names here because it's local. But how many owners do you know around the NHL? Like how many of them do you know by name?
Right, just Buffalo.
You don't know many, right? And why do you know the guy in Buffalo? Because he owns the Bills. Right. So his name is out there quite a bit, but also the complete disaster that organization has been, in terms of playoffs and everything else and roster and coaches and, Jack Eichel wanting out as fast as he can get out. Like there's been a lot of, so that's why you know that name. Well, there's a lot of people who know the Carolina owner because of how he came in and, we're never drafted a defenseman in the first round. We're offense. Like he's taken too much control. And it's his right. I mean, he owns the team. It's his right, but you don't see too many owners that have that kind of a hands-on approach in the NHL. Maybe Jeremy Jacobs in Boston. He has, Lou Lamoriello doesn't own a team, but he might as well own a team no matter where he goes because he calls all the shots no matter what. But you don't know too many owners. And I think with Carolina, I think they're starting to kind of get that reputation a little bit. And, and look, Gensel was close, right? Gensel, there was a lot of talk that he was going to sign the 8-year deal for $9 per year. And then they caught whispers of the Lightning being interested. And then they kind of took a step back and said, well, where would I rather play? So he comes down here and signs for 7 years, which is the max he could sign for 9.5. So he was close, at least if you believe the reports, and I have no reason to doubt what was out there. So at least he was close. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Carolina is starting to get kind of this little reputation that guys don't want to sign there long term, and we'll see how that affects them free agency because they're still a good team. They have tremendous players, right? Sebastian Aho is one of the quietest superstars in the league. Andrei Svechnikov is really kind of come into his own. Jacob Slavin is the most underrated player in the league. I mean, anybody saw that at the Four Nations, how good of a defenseman he is, right? Like, so they have a lot of really good players there. So if anybody doesn't want to sign there long term, it's not because of the coach. I can tell you that.
Yeah, and they do have some good kind of squad there to build off of if they can ever bring anyone in that they can keep. And to their credit, and Thomas, you kind of mentioned this earlier, they've done a good job of, recognizing that and trading away Ratnan and, making a positive out of it. And even Gensel, right? They traded the rights to Gensel to us. So they at least got something in return. Now, I thought the team looked slow last night. I don't know if you guys felt the same. I just thought they looked slow. So that makes me think, yeah, it's the schedule again. They've got all these games stacked up, and it doesn't get much easier, in the immediate future, right? Because they've got the Flyers tomorrow night, and then they've got Saturday night in Boston. And then they've got a Monday night. They just come back to Tampa on St. Patrick's Day to play the Flyers again. And then they hit the road for a pretty good road trip. They're going to hit the Stars, which, by the way, if you weren't here at the beginning of the show, we will be at Tampa Joe's for that Stars game, and we'll broadcast it live, but we want everyone to come join us over at Tampa Joe's next Thursday. But they also hit Utah for the first time on Saturday and then go to Vegas, a quick back-to-back. Thankfully, I like that scheduling, though, because they can't stay out too late when they get to Vegas. They got to play a game, and then hopefully they get the heck out of here and come back to Tampa. But my point is the schedule's not going to get much easier through the rest of March because they still got a couple games when they get back into town. So I wonder how much fatigue's really kind of playing into them just not playing well these last couple games. And like I said, it looked to me like they just seemed a lot slower last night.
Well, Carolina can do that. The pace that they play the game at, they're so aggressive on the puck. Like they can make you look slow, and you start disrupting passing lanes and start picking off passes, you look even slower, right? So there's certainly something to that. I have another theory on this though, and I don't know if anybody would ever come clean on this or admit to it or even talk about it.
Yes, Hedman is old.
So there's been 2 years where the Lightning have really pushed to the end of the regular season, like really pushed hard. 2014 and 2019. So 14 was John Cooper's first year, right? And they felt they needed home ice advantage against the Canadiens in the first round. They were, a new coach, a pretty youngish team at that time. So they felt they needed home ice. So they pushed for home ice. What happened? They got swept. 2019, they were chasing a record. And at the time, there was even talks about it. Well, do we want to chase this? Or do we not want to chase this? Are we concerned about it? And I think the consensus was we have a chance to chase history. Let's do it. And they pushed. And what happened? They got swept. So my theory is that there are times where they know they have to push and times where they know they don't have to push as hard. And at the end of the day, you've heard plenty of talk through the past number of years. They don't care where they start. If it's on the road, if it's at home, they don't care, right? 2022, they didn't have home ice advantage in any round, right? And they made it to the Stanley Cup final. Mm-hmm. So they don't concern themselves too much with that, right? And I think with the additions of Gordon Bjorkstrand now, they feel much better about matchup situations than maybe they did before the trade deadline. Maybe they don't feel as... Look, I'm not saying they're purposely not playing, but there are times where you have to go hard. And in February, they went hard. They committed to defending. They were, blocking shots left and right. They were doing all the playoff style of things, but that's hard to sustain. there's probably a reason Carolina hasn't really done a whole lot in the playoffs. I know they reached the conference finals a couple years ago and ended up getting swept by Florida, and which could have gone either way, even in a four game series. Um, but Carolina plays hard every single night, and the aggressive and the speed and everything else they have to put into it. The question always is, do they have enough left in the tank to work their way through the grind of a playoff season? Because it is a grind. It is a battle of attrition. Like I think the one story one year, Doug Gilmore lost like 30 pounds in the playoffs, like 30 pounds for a hockey player. Like that's hard to put there. There is nothing like an NHL postseason. There's nothing like it. And I think that, again, I don't think it's always a conscious thing, but I think it's in the back of their mind. Okay, we've put ourselves into a really good position here. Could we push hard and fight for number one in the postseason? Yeah, they could. Florida lost last night, kind of helped them out a little bit. So they're still within striking distance of the Panthers. But what would you rather have? Would you rather have that number one spot in the division and have no gas left in the tank? Or would you want to have, it's a debate, and you could have an argument either way. But I just get the feel with watching this team over the last number of years, they've always had a good, hard push that lasts for a few weeks. They put together a string of games, and then results kind of tail off a little bit. And again, it's just a theory. And I might be putting on my tinfoil hat right now, and it's fine. I'm sure some people will think that I'm just kind of, crazy in the thought process. But it just kind of feels that way. And I don't necessarily know that that's what's going on right now. But, I mean, to get completely outworked by the Bruins in that situation, that was odd, wasn't it? Like, you didn't see that coming. And again, I'm not saying it's a conscious thing, but sometimes it's kind of in the back of the mind. So that's my theory on it.
My theory is Shooter and myself have not been back in the press box in a while, and they won every single game we were in the press box. So I think we're going to have to try to get in there real quick. I do want to say some non-hockey breaking news. Eric, can you show your shirt real quick? Because congratulations to the USF women's basketball. They are the American Athletic Conference champions and got an automatic bid into March Madness women's finals. So
I was watching before we went live.
Can the committee please not put them in the same group as South Carolina this year? Please, I'm just begging you. Do not put them in South Carolina's region again this year. Okay, that's
awesome.
Sorry, I went online and saw that they had won, so I wanted to make sure we congratulated them, especially because I saw Eric had the shirt on. So
that's cool.
It's the alma mater, baby.
Yeah, I was watching the game before I came in here. I was watching with my daughter. So glad they held off.
So Eric, we also talked about how, and we know some players are in slumps and get in those little slumps, and once they get out of slumps, sometimes they just start banging them in. Sorelli has not scored since the Four Nations. Plenty of posts. If posts counted for goals, he would be about 20, 30, 40 goal scorer right now. I'm sure Sorelli knows he hasn't scored. I know it's in the back of his head. Have we heard anything from him about, what's going on with him?
No, and he wouldn't admit it anyway.
No.
But we know he's banged up, right? Like he missed a game right before the Four Nations break. He missed a couple of games earlier this year. I mean, there's just the way he plays, like people gave Ryan Callahan crap all the time because he was injured. Well, if he didn't play the way Ryan Callahan played, you'd be on him for not playing like Ryan Callahan, right? You just, I hear the same things about Eric Chernak. He's injury prone. Well, he's a shot blocker. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's part of his job. And he's a puck magnet. He just, last couple of years, man, a puck is going to find an errant way to hit him somewhere, right? So Sorelli just kind of plays that game. And I think one of the things that or at least that I've noticed from him of late is like the shot. I can't remember if it was the shot. I think it was the shot against Florida. Like he was back by the hash marks, when he was scoring goals earlier this year, that's where he was scoring them from.
That went in, yeah.
Now it feels like he's a little too close. Like he's kind of inched his way closer to the net where you got to get back. And look, I sit next to Chief all the time, right? Home games, road games for last call, everything. And he always talks about, shooting from the circles rather than getting in close and cutting down your own angle. Getting that shot off, before you hit the circles or right as you hit the circles, you open up so many other opportunities to shoot. And I think that's the one thing why he struggled offensively. And, somebody asked me at one point early in the season when he was on the great pace, Anthony Cirelli's going to score 30 goals, right? Well, I mean, he's never hit 20, right? Like this is the first year he's hit 20, or last year he hit 20, and this year he's at 20, but he was on a pace to hit 30. And unfortunately, he hasn't buried him. The good news is he is getting the chances, and you'd have to think that you usually get rewarded for the work you put in, and he's putting in the work. Hopefully the reward starts to come for him because they need his offense. I mean, he's a second line center. You need more offense out of your second line center. You can't just be a defensive specialist and be a second line center. They need the production, and they're certainly getting it from Brandon Hagel. I think Bjorkstrand, getting another season of Bjorkstrand, I think is going to help that line because he can kind of play that same style as well. So hopefully things start to turn around for him because they need his offense. They need it.
Yeah, I think the other thing is a lot of players are streaky. They're streaky scorers, and I feel like Cirelli's that way. I feel like Paul's that way. Killer was that way when he was here. They just come in bunches for some of these guys.
Yeah.
So hopefully, he's saving some of those bunches for the playoffs.
Guy Boucher used to say it all the time. The goals are like bananas. They come in bunches.
Yeah, exactly. I do want to go back to that trade. We were lucky enough to have our show on Wednesday night. The trade went down Wednesday afternoon. We had Dinger on actually, which was a treat. What were your thoughts on the trade? Were you surprised by it in any way? And I think one of the surprises for me was we haven't seen the Lightning go back to players too often and bring a guy back all that often in the whole history of the franchise. But they also did bring that extra piece with it as well. But what were your thoughts on the trade? Were you surprised by it?
Not surprised by Bjorkstrand. I think he's the kind of guy that Julian and the staff identify, right? Like he's a right-handed shot. He's a right wing. A lot of things that they check the boxes is he's a pretty good defensively responsible kind of guy. Signed for another year. I mean, that's a big thing when Julian makes these trades is what's the term left. He doesn't like to go into the rental market. He had to last year with Dumba and Duclair because of the cap situation and everything else. So that was the guy they identified. I think being able to bring in Yanni gives, and look, and I've said it, you're right. Reunions don't usually work out. Like Ryan McDonough is the exception. I mean, he's been exceptional this year.
And Vladdy, we're getting roasted in the chat now. Every player that's ever come back.
Yeah. So it doesn't normally work out when you bring a guy back, especially a player who was so vital to a couple of championship teams, right? Because everybody has in their mind this idea of the guy he was 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? And he's a little bit older. He's coming off the surgery. He still has.
But the one thing also with Yanni was that we never released him. He never signed it. He was picked from Seattle. Right. So I think that was the big thing also where it isn't somebody we've traded before, and it wasn't somebody that left the team in the offseason. He literally was left unprotected and just snatched from us. So I think that's where a lot of people didn't get to say goodbye, didn't know it was coming. He was believed at the time to be one of those protected players. We thought Killorn was going to be maybe someone that was unprotected at that time, and a couple others that were on that.
Killorn was unprotected.
Oh, yes. But everybody thought that's where they were going to go was take Killorn.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the rumors started coming out it was going to be Gord. And I think that's where a lot of people was upset with Gord being gone because that wasn't anything that was foreseen or expected until right before Seattle selected him.
Right. And that's a fair point. But we still have this idea of who Yanni Gord was when he was here. right? That's
Yeah.
and he's not the same kind of player. He's not a 20 goal. I don't think he's a 20 goal scorer anymore. He's still feisty. He still has the speed. He can still win some faceoffs. Obviously, you've seen him on the power play. There's still elements of his game to like. And so when I say it doesn't usually work out, it doesn't mean it can't work out. But we have this romantic notion of, oh, Yanni Gourde's back, and it's great. I mean, he's a fan favorite. From a media standpoint, it gives me somebody else in that locker room to go talk to, because he's a great talker. I had a pretty good relationship with Yanni when he was here, and everything else. So from a selfish standpoint, I'm happy as a clam to have him back in that locker room, because he's a great guy to talk to, just to kind of get insights and stuff like that into his game, and not necessarily for quotes or anything like that. But he still brings value, right? Like, we'll see where things go, but he has a lot of value to his game. It's not the same kind of value that we remember when he was the tone setter with Barclay and Goodrow. And John Cooper even said it. He said, we're not trying to recreate the Gourde, Goodrow, Coleman line, because you can't do it, because two of those guys aren't here. So you have to find different ways. And I think the expectation, from obviously from the fan base and everybody else, is, we've got the same Yanni Gourde. He's not quite the same player. And I think some of the expectations from Yanni himself are too, that he's coming back to the same team, and it's not the same team. I mean, you look at the roster that won that cup in 2021, compare it to now. What is there, like 6 guys left? 5 guys? Like, there's not a lot of guys left in that locker room that he won a cup with. So it's different here. So he has to find his new role on this team, because it is different. And he's been playing center, with Gonsalves and Bjorkstrand. I think that's probably going to change. I think eventually you're going to see Paul move back to the middle, and Gourde move out to the wing. When and if they move Bjorkstrand up to the line with Cirelli and Hagel, I think that's ideally how it's going to go. We'll see. But to me, for the Lightning to get out of this trade deadline, to add players the caliber of Bjorkstrand and Gourde, and you only lose Mikey Asamont. And how many times did we call Mikey Asamont Yanni Gourde light, right? He was Yanni Gourde without the scoring punch.
Yep.
So it's similar type of players. So it's a swap here, swap there. But the big thing for me is they got out of this trade deadline without losing anybody out of that locker room besides Asamont, and you didn't have to move a Duke, a Gauthier, an Isaac Howard, anybody that was at the top of your prospect list of who you think can be impact players, or at least come up and contribute at the NHL level in the next 2 or 3 years. You didn't have to part ways with any of those guys. To me, that's an absolute win for this organization. I know 2 first-round draft picks, but we all know the quote. We all heard Julian talk about it. He'd rather have a stockpile of good players than a stockpile of draft picks, right? He's trying to win now. He's trying to win cups now. And Oliver Bjorkstrand gives them a much better chance with a Nikita Kucherov at 30, with a Braden Point at 28, 29, with Vasilevsky at 30, 31. Those guys give this team a better chance to win more cups than somebody who might be picked 26th overall 2 years from now. You might not see him for 5 years, right? So I have zero issue not having first-round draft picks, because if you look at the record of their first-round draft picks, it's been hit or miss outside of Vasilevsky, right? I mean, Nikita Kucherov was a second-round pick. Braden Point was a third-round pick. Anthony Cirelli was a third-round pick, right? And we'll see where Isaac Howard stands.
I think he's the only one from this decade that they've had.
Yeah, right, because they've traded him all away.
Yeah.
Right? They've traded him all away, going back, I think, to like the 15-16 range.
Looking like he could be a good one, though.
Yeah, and we'll see. I fully expect him to be here.
Do you think there's any chance we see him this year?
Absolutely.
You think
Absolutely.
so?
I think so, because we'll see how far Michigan State goes. They're the number 1 seed in the Big Ten. Minnesota got eliminated by Notre Dame, so Notre Dame is the matchup for Michigan State. Now it's single elimination. The first rounds was best 2 out of 3. Now it's single elimination. They anticipate they'll be in the Frozen Four, or at least in the NCAA tournament, with a chance to get to the Frozen Four. So depending on how long his season goes, but just the history of players in his situation, he's in his 3rd year of college. And if anybody's not familiar with the way the CBA works, players who in their 4th year of college, who play 4 full years of college hockey, can be free agents at the end of their 4th year. Not till August. It's not July 1, but by August, they can become free agents. So there will be incentive for the Lightning to sign him. And then you incentivize the contract because you tell these players, you come in now, you will burn year 1 of your entry level deal. So you'll hit restricted free agency a year sooner and unrestricted free agency a year sooner with the way the CBA is currently set up. And then you tell them you're going to join the big club. You're going to come here. We're going to get you into a game or two. We're not going to promise playoffs. This isn't Chris Kreider, who literally signed the night BC won a championship here at Amalie Arena. And a day later he was in the lineup for the Rangers facing the Senators in round 1 of the playoffs. So there'll be no guarantees of postseason play. Doesn't mean he won't be, but I fully anticipate that's the path that the Lightning are going to take, especially with the way that Sammy Walker and Cole Gutman left the organization. Right, they were both pretty good college players. They invested a lot, especially Sammy Walker. I mean, if anyone remembers Sammy Walker, when he was drafted, he was like 5'6", but he was a water bug. I mean, he was all over the ice, had a really good career at the University of Minnesota, hit a massive growth spurt. He was about 5'10", 5'11" by the time he finished his college career. Played all 4 years at Minnesota, opted to become a free agent, went to go play for the Wild. Now is with Utah's club. So he's kind of milling about. He was a 7th round pick. And Cole Gutman was the same way. He went to Chicago, got some games, but the organization lost both those guys because they became free agents after their 4 years of college were over. If Isaac Howard gets to his 4th year, you really have to worry. Killorn went all 4 years to Harvard, signed here. Right, he came in and actually helped Norfolk win that championship that year, coming out of Harvard. So, but yeah, I fully anticipate that the path the Lightning will try and go with Isaac Howard is exactly how I laid it out, because you want to try and get this guy into the organization because, in some of the conversations I've had with people around the organization, they rave about the difference Isaac Howard year 2 to year 3, just in terms of the work he's put in the gym. How much bigger and stronger he's become. His commitment to playing more of a 200-foot game. And he's one of the leading scorers in the NCAA, right? He's up for, last I saw, he was leading the vote.
For the Hobey Baker.
Thank you,
Yep.
Hobey Baker. Yes, it slipped my mind. For the Hobey Baker, he was leading. I haven't seen the votes. I don't know where things sit lately, but he was, he's one of the top players in college hockey, right? So you want to make sure that those kind of players, you don't lose them. So, and there's only so much you can do with a contract for players on the entry level. So the incentive is you tell them you come in, you burn year 1 after just a couple weeks. You're going to burn year 1 of your entry level deal, and you'll be that much closer to hitting different contracts at a younger age than you would be if you waited another year. So that's the incentive, because the bonus structures are basically all the same. The base salary is the same. There's only so much you can do with rookie contracts. So that's how you incentivize types of players like Isaac Howard to come join your organization soon.
Yeah, that's awesome. Especially after the college career he's had, not great last year and then transfers and just, unbelievable so far this year. So that's exciting for a lot of fans who are very worried about.
I do want to say something back at the trade about the trade before we move past that. I thought one of the biggest things on that trade with Yanni was that we're only paying 25% of the salary. You had 50% staying with Seattle, 25% going, and we only getting the 25%. I thought that was a huge thing. But there was no rumors out there of Bjorkstrand even coming here. You had seen the one that had Yanni coming here, and Jay had interviewed that guy that put that, and that was supposed to be some kind of joke just for him to get Yanni back here on Tampa's thing, and it showed Atkinson going away. But then, and then there was a couple rumors going around who the Lightning were targeting, and Bjorkstrand was nowhere on that list at all. So when that came out, of course, the Yanni thing came first, that it was definitely Yanni who was coming back. And then all of a sudden you saw Borky here all of a sudden as part of the trade. and then Isimont gone. And it was like, oh, well, that came out of nowhere. And I think I'm more excited about Bjorkstrand being here than Yanni back. I mean, I love Yanni. He's a great guy. Was always good with the fans and always fun to watch. But Bjorkstrand is just as fun to watch play.
He's got some extra term too.
Yeah, and that's what they needed him. That was the guy they needed to have, right? They need a guy who can play middle six on a consistent basis, who can score you some goals. He's a 20-goal scorer. He's got a chance of hitting 20 once again this year between the two teams. He's going to get some number one power play time. I think that's, I don't think that's been talked about quite enough, is his role as a right-handed shot on the power play, because I mean, I know the numbers are there for the Lightning's power play this year, and they've had a couple of games where they've scored 3 power play goals. Like I think the game in Chicago that rescued them from that game against the Blackhawks, and they won it in overtime with a power play goal. So they've had a couple of games like that. But if you watch the way, and believe me, my Twitter feed tells me, it's been inconsistent. It's been inconsistent. It hasn't been a momentum grabbing type of power play of late. I feel some of these power play goals they've scored have been not by accident, but by, not through setups, right? The Victor Hedman 5-on-3 goal went off of a stick and deflected, right? Like it's those kind of goals. They count as power play goals, but those are the type of goals that they're scoring. I think with Bjorkstrand now, and we saw it certainly last night in the one chance that they had, and we saw it a little bit in the game against Boston where they've put him over there to be a threat. And I think with him as a right shot threat from that side of the ice opens up the power play again, and this is why you've seen Darren Radish giving a look over there. You've seen Mitchell Chafee giving a look over there, at least early on. Even early in the season, Cam Atkinson is a right-handed shot, got some looks over there. They've moved Braden Point to that spot. I mean, they're desperate to find a threat from that side of the ice to open everything up for Kucherov, because everything runs through him. Right. And if you have that threat across the ice, if he can show, look, nobody's going to replicate Steven Stamkos. Can't be done. Only Alex Ovechkin has that kind of a shot. So you're not going to get that type of a player over there, but a guy that can be a consistent threat to score goals opens up the rest of the ice for Nikita Kucherov to work with. And that is a big bonus. I think that's why they really targeted a right-hand shot kind of guy. I think that's why Alex Tuch's name was out there, right, as interest that the Lightning had him, and Peterka, I think.
I thought for sure he was here. I thought for sure.
Yeah. Well, when you look at it, Buffalo didn't want futures. They wanted players, right? And you look at the Norris and Cousins trade. They wanted players, not futures. They're done with futures. They need players to help the big club. And I think that's probably where things kind of, went off on a tangent in those discussions. But, having that right-hand shot there hopefully is going to open up this power play to make it, as dangerous as it has been. It's not, you're not putting Steven Stamkos in that laser one-timer over in that circle. It's not going to happen, but he's got a good knack for getting his shot off, and he's done it twice, right? He had a really good look against the Bruins, and I think he had a really good look against Columbus at 1.2, where Kucherov just kind of slid a pass over to him, and he put it wide or whatever, but you can kind of see the more he gets comfortable with playing with Nikita Kucherov and understanding how he operates. And I think he has it, right? Like his game-winning goal against the Sabres, he even said it. He goes, well, I saw Nikita Kucherov had the puck on his stick, so I tried to hang around the net because I figured something was going to happen. And sure enough, it did. He ended up scoring the game-winning goal. So having his presence there on the power play, I think, is going to be a big part of this moving forward as well.
Yeah, totally agree. That was a big part of bringing him in, and it's just awkward having a left-handed shot on that side. Yep. Makes everything strange. So hopefully everything starts to click, and just in time for the playoffs with that power play. Not that they've been horrible this year at all. If you're just joining us, we're here with the Lightning Insider. Make sure you go check out lightninginsider.com, subscribe. Eric Erlinson is his name. You probably should already know who he is. He's been covering the team for 75 years now, and the team's only been around for 30-something. So here, we got a good question, though. I think Chris Longtime's trying to stump you here.
Chris!
Lightning are 2 Kucherov goals away from 4 players with 30-plus goals this season. Have we ever had that many before? That's a tough question to put you on the spot for. But if anyone knows it, you would.
I don't think 4 guys. I think they've had 3. The only one that it might have been, because Hagel hit 30 2 years ago. I think they might have done it 2 years ago.
With all 4?
Hagel hit 30. Stammer would have hit 30. Point would have hit 30. The
Cooch.
question is, did Kucherov hit 30?
Yeah,
That's a good
that
question.
makes sense.
As we all grab our phones to check. Oh, well, I see Eric's looking in the background of his, so obviously he's pulling it up on his computer, and so is Shooter.
I'll let you guys look it up. I don't think they've had 4 before that. If they did do it 2 years ago,
I don't think before that. I think that there's a year that was the year that it happened. Yeah, I'm gonna have to use my phone here.
By
What
the way,
about-
Hobie award-winning voting is closed,
Okay.
and we will find the winner out in 29 days.
Yeah,
What
because
about-
they open it up to fan voting, and then there's other votes, former players and stuff like that do it. So
It says the Tampa Bay Lightning have not had 430-goal scores in a single season. They have not had 425-goal scores in a single season either.
well, there you go. It'll probably happen this year if we can get Cooch back on the ice soon.
As of February 2025, the Lightning have had 4 players reach 25 goals through the first 54 games of the season, which hasn't been done by an NHL team in over 30 years.
yeah, so but that's in 2023. I'm sorry, 20. This is why I don't trust AI, Thomas. In 2023, Nikita Kucherov had 30 goals. Point had 51. Stamkos had 34. Hagel had 30.
Well, there you go.
So
One of many reasons he does not trust AI.
it's even less. It's even less trust on my memory, but
Wendy's got a good one here.
It was Cooch, Point, Hagel, and Stammer.
Yep. Yeah, those are the 4 because Hagel just hit that 30 goal mark. The only question mark was Kucherov, and he had 30 that year. 30 goals, 83 assists.
So to Chris Longtime's next question, are you back on the JBB We Trust train? The answer would be no, since he was one of our 30 goal scorers. Anyway, I digress.
You're never going to let that one go, the whole Stamkos thing, huh?
No.
Wendy's got a good one here talking about the Isaac Howard situation. Have the Lightning ever had that situation with the college player at that level in college? You mentioned Killer, who they let graduate, but was he was drafted by the Lightning before he graduated?
I think she's asking, and Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong, if they've ever had a player this high of a caliber college player that they've had in the system. I think if I'm reading that right, I can't think if they've ever had a true Hobie Baker candidate. They've had guys that have been in that conversation, but not considered a top 3, top 4, top 5 kind of guy, right? I can't think of any. They've had a handful of college players come through, like Matt Gilroy was a Hobie Baker winner, but he wasn't drafted by them. I can't think off the top of my head if they've had a player who's been a high level college player. Nick Perbix?
She said yes. That is what she's talking about.
Okay. Yeah. Perbix was kind of on a lot of lists. His 4th year there at North Dakota. Obviously, being the Olympics for Team USA and in 2022 raised that profile a little bit. Not at the college level. They had plenty of junior level players for sure, but I can't think of any college level players that were considered that high of prospects at the time. So, good question, Wendy.
And last year's winner, Macklin Celebrini's kind of a big deal this year over there.
Good player. He's a really good player. He's going to be a star in this league.
No doubt. Do you know how the Lightning got their name? Do you know that story? Who actually Phil Esposito credited with basically
I should know this because I've read Phil's book.
Giving him the idea?
I know he had a lot of conversations with Tom McEwen.
That's
But
not what I
I don't
heard.
think I don't
I
think
mean, I'm sure he did.
I'm not I don't think that's who it was. But I know Tom McEwen
Stumped
is
him,
the one.
Thomas.
I know
Got him.
Tom McEwen is the one who told him it's never Tampa, it's always Tampa Bay. So
It was Benny Lazara's mom.
yeah, I wasn't getting that one.
Benny Lazara, the lawyer.
Have a chance to talk. I was about to say that.
That had to have come out over a dinner at Malio's.
At a barbecue, they were debating what the name should be. Thunderstorm rolls in, as it does in Tampa Bay, and Mom said, "You should name the team the Lightning," and he said, "That's it." I had saw that earlier this week.
That's a good origin story.
That's a good one. All right, let's get the heck out of here. We got some hockey games the rest of the week. Thomas, you got anything else? Oh, I do have one more thing I want to bring up, but you got anything else, Thomas?
No. So for Eric, if you're not busy next Thursday, feel free to join us at our watch party in Tampa.
If it's a game day, and it is, right? Thursday's a game day. I'm at the radio studio.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's right. You're fancy. I forgot.
Hey, gotta make some income somehow.
Yeah, you know what? We're just gonna come down there and join you, and we're gonna be in studio with you and Chief.
Make sure you bring the spoon.
Well, I bring it everywhere I go. Now, I think the news on this really just broke today, and I think you're probably going to be a fan of this, Eric, because I've followed you for a long time, and you seem to be a Simpsons fan.
Oh gosh,
I know where you're going.
This is not going to be The Simpsons, but we've got Hockey Paradise. Did you see, though, they did a Simpsons football game
Absolutely.
last season?
Yeah, I think I caught the second half. I think I was surprise working a soccer game for it, but I got home for the second half.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. So we're gonna get some sort of variation, and you've seen the league do it with one of these Greenfields cartoon. I think they did last season. You're seeing all the leagues. Basketball did one with some other cartoon. This I don't think is going to be themed after an actual cartoon. This is just going to be. It says here. This is going to be the Bolts and the Islanders, March 29th, so in a couple weeks, 2 p.m. game, afternoon game at Amalie. It's going to be Hockey Paradise in a Tampa-themed virtual world featuring the iconic buildings, beaches, and water life of Tampa Bay. Yep. You know, it's going to be silly, but I think this is pretty cool that they're going to do this really about the Bolts and about Tampa. So we're basically going to see the players on this broadcast represented as animations in real time. So when Nikita Kucherov scores a goal, inevitably, it's going to be a cartoon character of Kuch scoring a goal. Unfortunately, I'm going to be at that game. I might have to sell my tickets because I might want to watch it at home. But what do you think about this? Is there any way that we can get an animated Lightning Insider for this?
They haven't contacted me for my CG, so
not yet.
CGI, not yet. I love it. I love these things, right? Like it's a great way to expand your fan base, right? It's a great way to introduce the game to maybe somebody who might not otherwise watch it out. Hey, they're animating now. I'll check that out, and they kind of get hooked on it. And obviously, with was a Big Green Fields, Big Fields Green, whatever it is, the Disney show that they did the first one after. Obviously, the NFL did the Simpsons. I think the NBA was the Disney characters. I think didn't they say Goofy like dunked on Wembanyama?
Yep.
My son came out and said, Goofy just dunked on Wembanyama. So, I mean, those are great. Those are great things. I think it's better when it's themed like that because you integrate familiar animated characters into it. But this is going to be pretty cool. I mean, to kind of surround, so many Tampa themed situations with this, and I saw some of the previous ones they've done. Like it's pretty cool animation, right? Like somebody scores a goal and the net just blows up. Yeah. Right. It kind of knocks over. Like it's pretty cool stuff. And yeah, I like you, I'm going to be at that game as well. So I want to maybe they'll have it on in the press box somewhere where we can kind of keep an eye on it. For one thing, I know it's going to be streamed on through the team app, right? So you can even look at it on your phone.
Yeah.
if you wanted during the game. I might have to have my computer, have a little screen up here at the top as the game's going on to kind of keep an eye on the animated version. Just see, first of all, see how far behind the live game it is, because I always get stuff from people. Hey, your updates are like 30 seconds ahead of my stream. Well, yeah,
They are.
that's kind of how it goes. So I want to see how in tune it is to real time as well. But yeah, I love these type of situations where you can market the game and grow the game and introduce the game to an audience that maybe otherwise hasn't checked out hockey, has been intimidated by hockey. Let's face it, there's a lot of people who are intimidated by the sport because it moves so fast, and they don't understand some of the rules, and that's what we're here to do. I hope I've educated a fair number of people through the years, to the game, so they're not intimidated by it. It's a beautiful, wonderful, awesome game. I've loved it for years, and the more people that can be interested in it, the better off the sport's going to be. So I love these type of things.
Yeah, I'm excited they're doing it with the Lightning, and they are going to have a free outdoor watch party on Thunder Alley. So if you don't want to go to the game, bring your chair, and I guess they're going to have it up on the garage. So
Well, that'd be cool.
that will
Eric,
be cool.
I have a question for you that I brought up to Deidre the one time. When is the last time you have sat in the arena in regular seats as a fan?
That's a good one. Wow. So my youngest son now is 19. He'll be 20 at the end of this month. So it was probably when he was around maybe 7 or 8 years old. Was probably the last time I had a rare opportunity. I went with my brother and a couple of the boys and took them to a game and sat in the stands. That's probably the last time I've been to a hockey game, not in the press box, as a fan.
I'm going to tell you the same thing I told Deandra. Once they make the playoffs, you guys need to all just. I think the press box should be empty that night. And you guys all just go sit down and be able to cheer and be able to enjoy the game as a fan one time and sit down there and be able to just because I was sitting here when we were talking about this animation, and I was going to say if anybody does not follow Eric and know why this was a question that Shooter wanted, you will always see something with the Simpsons guaranteed on a game day thread from Eric Errolson if you follow the Lightning Insider on Twitter or X. So, and then it got me thinking, you know what? This man covers every single game up there. And the same thing I had asked Deandra, I was like, when, because I know that was the thing that me and Shooter were like struggling with. I mean, it was that you can't cheer, you can't be a fan, you can't high five people down there and stuff like that. Of course, we don't get the good stories like you do up there with Espo and Chief and all those. But once we make it into the playoffs, you guys need to loosen the tie up, come in your favorite little jersey, and come and sit with the common folks. I have 2 seats to every game. Shooter has 2 seats to half the games. Come sit with us and be a common folk one time and just enjoy the game. Eat some pretzels. We'll take you to the Market on 4 and get you some King of the Coop.
Bring it to the beer garden.
Chicken strips. We'll get you some Bacon Babes, Pebbles cookies, and Nutella cookies. We'll hook you up, Eric. Just come down with us for once.
But that would take me away from my radio duties.
We'll send Thomas up to do that. Look, Stephanie summed it all up for us. There are 3 things we learned tonight. Lightning were bound to slow down after 8 games. Don't panic's number 2. Number 3, they possibly won't push hard. They just want to get in. And you are very right about that, because if we think back, it was a little bit different, I feel like, this time of year last season, but it seems like most seasons they do have that little just drop off in March, and it's just kind of like they're waiting for the playoffs. So maybe we're just kind of there right now, but it makes me a little nervous because we're not
I
completely.
think we've backed in the last couple season. We've kind of backed in with like six game losses and stuff like that. Because I think every time around this year we have Eric on who's saying, "Don't panic," and my Twitter is a
Uh,
mess with people yelling at me.
uh,
So
uh,
I think we could play this same show every single year right around the same time and get away with
uh,
it.
yeah, it's funny because yeah, hey, look, and I know this is human nature, but during the 8-game winning streak, my mentions were pretty quiet, right? They lose a couple of games, and I was they look terrible. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're out and they're going to get swept. Like I understand it; it's human nature. But there's one guy in particular who I used to work with at the paper, and that's the only time I hear from him. I'm like, come on, man! Like you can't give him praise once. You can't say, hey, what a game from Kucherov. Like I just look for balance, right? I'm never going to sit there and tell somebody how you should react to a team losing a game, right? There's passion there, and that's what that is. That's passion as a fan, and you have it, and that's what makes especially this sport so great. Is there's so many great passionate fans, but there has to be a balance. It's okay to praise people every now and then. Like, don't just come out of the woodworks. And I was laughing. I saw the one graphic you put up earlier where Stephanie was talking about Vazzy taking a practice off. I kind of followed that little thread on Facebook earlier today, and at some point, that guy's just trolling to troll. And that's all he's doing.
Oh yeah.
There's no way he feels that way. He's looking to see how far he can push it. So that's one thing I've learned through my years on social media is if people want to bitch and complain, that's fine. Occasionally, I'll fire something back, but not too often because it's just passionate, and we love the passion. It's what being a fan is all about. It's about being in the stands and cheering and high fiving and eating the pretzels. And I mean, that's the great part about sports that we love is we put so much of our heart and soul into it. And I see it in my own household sometimes, right? So I love all of that, the passion of the fans, because without the fans, there's nobody playing, right? It's just that's at the end of the day, that's what it is. If there's no fans, there's no games, and if there's no games, what do we look to direct that passion towards for? So I love the passion. Just hey, balance it out every now and then.
But honestly, though, how have they not traded Andre Vasilevsky after what he's done? 9.5 million, Eric. We're paying this guy.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys that only show up on those games too, and put down the goaltending, and it's again, I found that there's a lot of people who like to throw lines in the water and bait you into stuff. I don't fall for the bait anymore.
I can't respond to those. The Vasi haters were out strong last night. It's like, who do you think we're gonna bring in here? Who's gonna do half the stuff he's done?
Yeah.
Well, Harrison did win for the Crunch 2-1 tonight. Actually, Sherry with the game winner for the Crunch tonight, and he factored in both goals. He got the assist on the first goal, and they won 2-1 as they're trying to make their playoff push too.
Yep.
I do want to say something to the BFL members, Bolts for Life, no longer STMs, now BFLs, that are going to paint the ice on Friday. I unfortunately cannot make it because I have to be at the Pirates spring training game. So I want somebody to do hashtag Lightning Insider and hashtag We the Thunder on Paint the Ice and send us a picture, please.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah, somebody's got to do that because I won't be there either. I'll be jamming out at the reggae festival across the bay. But thank you. I got multiple invites for people that had an extra ticket to go to that. So
I was going to skip the Pirates game, but we are playing the Detroit Tigers, who Little Caesars owns the Detroit Tigers, and apparently I have to dress up in some kind of mascot. And
speaking of pictures,
right, greet the team as they get off the bus for Little Caesars. So that's what I'll be doing on my Friday night.
This is all part of Thomas's 5-year plan to become Thunderbug, I think. it's training right now.
Well, at least he wouldn't have to camp out on the roof hoping for playoff tickets to sell out.
Yeah, true. I I did just find out that I will be in a mascot race when it becomes the AAA team, the Bradenton Marauders, and they want me to do the race for the mascots around the bases.
Better start getting in shape now.
Yeah, I said I'm just gonna hit
Especially
everybody,
in
knock
Florida.
everybody down. Yeah.
Those things get hot, man. Those things get hot.
It is very hot. I've been in it now. Will be my third time on Friday. So
Yep.
All right, we got some promises for Friday. So if you guys can take a picture of that, we'd love if you could do that for us and take a picture. Both Lightning Insider and We the Thunder. That'd be awesome. All right, Eric, got anything else to push out here to the people?
No, I think we covered a pretty good number of topics. 18 games left, 19 games left. It's, the schedule's going to kind of balance out here a little bit. There's no more hectic schedules. Everything is basically every other day or 3-game weeks, with the exception of that back-to-back in Utah and Vegas. So at least now they'll kind of get into a regular routine where they can get some practices. And I mean, that's part of this too, is there's not a ton of practice time. And sometimes when habits start to, creep in, the coaches love to get them on the ice and practice. And because, I asked these questions and wrote about this earlier in the year, that tape can only show you so much. You have to be on the ice to feel things, right? So when coaches see things start to slip and players know that things are starting to slip, they can't, there's only so much you can do with video. So you have to be on the ice to kind of get that feel back for it, whether it's systems and, try and make things instinctual. And, when you go through a couple of the schedule stretches that the Lightning have, there's just not a lot of practice time. And, even, they came back, a few days before that Seattle game after the break, but half the team wasn't there, right? Like you were missing, 4 players and the head coach. Right. So it wasn't, the type of practice that kind of gets you familiar. So, hopefully now with some more practice days on the horizon, they can kind of get back to some of the good habits and get back to playing more of a winning style of hockey, because that's what they did in February, was a winning style of hockey. It hasn't been there the past couple of games. It's, like I said, you got to build it back up now. And hopefully with the schedule being sort of flattened out a little bit, that'll help them.
Yeah. And I believe
I don't remember which player it was on the block party, whether it was Radish or Vasi, and there was live taping of the block parties, but one of them was saying how they don't really watch too much video now anymore because of the compact schedule and stuff like that. That more it's the coaches that watch it and say, hey, this is what we need to change. This is what we're seeing. And that's where the practice is. And they don't actually watch too much video themselves anymore. It's more of
Clips.
the coaches watch. And
I've shown clips here and there.
Well, these guys know what they need to do to win. We've got a pretty good veteran squad, so I ain't giving up on these guys anytime soon. But it'll be an exciting stretch here. The playoffs is fixed. I mean, it's wide open this year. It really is. So it's going to be an exciting end year.
And this is my annual plea to everybody. Please stop equating what you see in a game in March and translate it to a playoff game in April. It's never the same. The intensity level is never the same. You don't game plan for one team in the regular season. You game plan for one team in the postseason. You try and exploit areas you think you can exploit. So, the best example I can give you is 2011 series against the Penguins. They found a weakness in Marc-Andre Fleury's game. He left the crease too early if the puck was going behind the net. How did Sean Bergenheim score those 2 goals, including the only goal in Game 7 against the Penguins on that exact play that they scouted? That's the kind of thing. The year the Lightning in 2004 when they won the Cup, the Islanders won 3 of the 4 regular season matchups between the 2 teams, and they split. They split the first 2 games. The Islanders, and I know some people who were working in the Islanders room said the Islanders were so arrogant and cocky because they had beaten them three times in the regular season, and 4 out of the 6 times they faced each other, they felt they had it. Well, what happened? They got 0 goals in the 2 games in Nassau County. Lightning came back with a 3-1 lead, won that series in 5. Don't equate the way the team plays in March and say, well, if they play like this in April, they'll be out. You can't equate it. You can't put the 2 together and say, well, they're playing like this now. This isn't the NFL. Right? This is not the NBA. This is hockey. It is literally the most different kind of playoffs compared to the regular season you will find in sports, because the intensity
2016,
level, the block shots, everything is so much different. Enjoy the regular season, but we know the fun is really the postseason.
I think it was 2017. We swept the Penguins 4-0 in regular season, and then they bounced us out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's two different animals there. I mean, I think we had Columbus's number the year they swept us in 2019 in the regular season, and
They had
then
everybody's number that year,
yeah,
right? And the other thing too is like both teams are now on the same schedule. You know, you're not catching the Lightning aren't coming in from Detroit at 3:00 in the morning after having played in Boston the night before. You're not getting any of that. You know, there's no scheduled losses in this situation. Both teams are in the same boat. Like there is no comparison to what you see a team play in the regular season and say, well, hey, I mean, look, the Lightning in 04, I want to say they lost like 4 of the last 6 games, right? And going into that, and well, if they play like this, well, they didn't, and they won a cup. Like it just, you just please stop telling me in my social media feeds that, well, if they play like this in April, they'll be out in the first round once again. It's just there's no way to compare the two to each other. You know, wait till we get there. Look, if they get swept, if they get swept or if they lose in the first round, it's not going to be because they lost a Tuesday night game in Raleigh in March. It's just not the reason why.
True. Well said. And that's why you are the Lightning Insider. Make sure you go follow Lightning Insider. Go to lightninginsider.com, subscribe. You know, it's one thing to have some knuckleheads like me and Tom as super fans talking hockey. We need professionals like Eric. He's covered the team 75 years, knows everything about it except how they got their name, which now he knows. But thank you, as always, for jumping on. I guess Thomas just left. Oh, there he is. Getting his Diet Coke. Oh, did you see the clip? I tagged you in it with Geeky trying the sodas. He's a Diet Coke guy.
yes.
There you go. All right, but we're out of here. Make sure we're gonna kill you guys with it on social media because I told Tampa Joe's we can fill up at least that bar area. So show up next Thursday night to watch the Stars game with us. It is 8:00. We're gonna be set up and ready to go by 7:00. If you are Distant Thunder, like the traveling food dude, hey, if you're in town, we better see you, buddy. But if you're not, we will be broadcasting the entire watch party too, and we'll have mics set up and everything. So it'll be a pretty cool scene if you're not in town. But if you're in town, come see us. Tampa Joe's right off the Veterans at that big AMC movie theater over there at Veterans on
And those
Thursday night.
complaining that it is a late game, just come to the end of the first period,
Yeah, you don't have to stay
end
for
of
the
the
whole thing.
second. No.
Do some Jello shots. Get out of here, you know. Or watch Thomas do Jello shots, which I'm going to do.
I will.
And then next week, 9:00 start time again, and we'll have the Hockey Collective on, and we are going to give away a signed Victor Hedman puck, thanks to the Hockey Collective, and it'll be pretty cool to kind of hear her whole story about what she's trying to do there with that account. So join us next Wednesday, and then join us live next Thursday. Again, appreciate you jumping on, Eric. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to be on, boys. Always great conversation, and I look forward to the next one. Hopefully, much better times when that happens.
All right. Until next time, everyone, this has been We the Thunder. Don't forget to be the Thunder.
That's it?